In today's video, I'm showing you a very cool collaboration. It is between the Australian pen maker Just Turnings and the Australian nibmeister Inkcision Works, or Daniel over there. They've collaborated on a product that is really interesting and sort of bridges the gap between dip pen and fountain pen. They're not the first to do this, but this is a really lovely collaboration between two great Australian personalities in the pen world. So I'm really glad to be showing it to you today. So please like and subscribe, hit the notifications button, and consider becoming a member of this channel, where for a small monthly fee, you'll get early access to my videos, priority comments, and members only Q&As, hopefully starting up in the next month or so. But right now, let's look at this very cool collaboration between Just Turnings and Inkcision Works. So what we have today was provided to me by Inkcision Works, and it came in that bag and in this little pouch. And what we have here is the Just Turnings Inkcision Works collaboration, the DIPPER. DIPPER being because you dip it in ink. It's a dip pen. It is a smaller bodied pen with this beautiful, turned acrylic body. It's on the smaller side, but it is insanely comfortable. And I have to say, this particular material is absolutely gorgeous. Just like where the light catches it like that. Oh, just absolutely fantastic. So this uses a number 6 Yovo threaded section, right? So you can unscrew the body there. And that is a number 6 Yovo nib and housing, and that simply screws into the body of the DIPPER. There are other brands who have done Yovo dip pens, right? And a couple have even used the feed, but where this one's different is that it uses the entire housing, which is such a bonus because it is so much easier to remove and change the nibs. It gives you great variety. You can buy those nib housings from various retailers in different nib sizes, all those kinds of things. But in this instance, where this is particularly interesting, is the fact that Daniel Zhang there at Inkcision Works, the Australian nibmeister, Inkcision Works there, he does his fantastic grinds on these Yovo stock nibs. And so you can order this when it comes. I'll give you information about how to order it a little later in the video. But you can order this with either a stock nib or with a Inkcision Works grind on it. And I've used a number of the grinds from Inkcision Works. The medium architect I have might be my favorite steel nib in my entire collection. Like, the actual nib on page experience is so special. And I have to say, this one is also amazing. When they asked me what nib size I wanted, I said, look, I would love an oblique nib. As I'm left-handed, we'll go right-footed. You can see the nib sort of leans slightly down towards the right. And I also asked for it to be slightly stubby, so just slightly rounded corners, just to be a little more forgiving for me. And that's what I got. I'll link to the Inkcision Works page down below, but you can also check out my review of the nibs, which I'll also link to down below. But let's talk about what the DIPPER actually is. After the nib, you get a little like beveled sort of step onto the section, and then the section sort of is slightly, has a slight sort of taper and flare to it there, which makes it very comfortable to hold. And because it's a number 6 size nib, you're a good length away from the page. And then once you get to the main body of the pen, it sort of tapers very, very slightly, and then you get like a nice polished semi-rounded end there. In terms of measurements, with the nib unit on it, it's about 114 millimeters. Without the nib, so like end of the holder to the end there is about 91. And yes, there's no cap, there's no roll stop, like a little pen stand or something really useful with a pen like this. The section is about 11 millimeters in the middle, and the widest point on the pen is about 13 millimeters. So it's, as I said, it doesn't feel small in the hand, and it's got a sort of a nice gentle weight to it. It's only 12 grams, but because it is a, you know, a smaller item at 12 grams, it feels nice and it feels solid because like it is solid acrylic here for the most part of the pen. There's no ink reservoir. The only ink reservoir is the feed. So we'll talk a little bit now about how this is going to be made available. Now, I'm exceptionally lucky to be one of the first people to use this and test it and have a play with it and all that kind of thing. And I'm exceptionally grateful to Inkcision Works and Just Turnings, two of my favorite Australian, fountain pen companies, small companies. This is going to be first done in a very limited release. There's only a small number of these. They're kind of testing the waters, if you will, to see if this is something that would garner some interest. I think it's brilliant. I'm going to say that straight up here. I think this is brilliant. If you are one of those people who loves using different inks, you don't want to have a bunch of pens inked up, being able to write for a substantial amount of time on one dip or just keep dipping as you need as you're writing, a pen like this is a huge asset. You know, more than a glass dip pen, more than a Kakimori, anything like that. This one will write for quite a while. So I think there will be interest. There definitely should be. I think it's brilliant. So basically, what's going to happen is you can go to the website, which I will link a specific website in the video description here that you go to express interest in the initial release. And then at the end of June 2026, currently being filmed and posted at the beginning of June 2026, at the end of June, you will get an email notification when it is available for sale. As I said, small, limited initial release. They will start at 75 to 85 Australian dollars based on the material you get, and that will come with a stock Yovo nib. Now, if you want an Inkcision nib grind, and I absolutely suggest you get one because they are brilliant, that will come at an additional cost, but it'll be about $15 cheaper than buying this and the nib separately. So, like the nib grind separately. So it works out really, really well. And due to the initial limited sort of release, you will be able to get some decent sort of nib service available as well, because, there's not going to be too many of them available in that first hit. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to show it in use. So I have some optic paper here, which is an Oxford brand notebook, which is fountain pen friendly paper that I love, that is readily available here in Australia from places like Officeworks in sort of basic lecture formats. There's no nice formats or anything like that. What I'll be using is Moray Eel Green from Anderillium, US-based ink company. Moray Eel Green, one of my favorite inks at the moment, and I've been using it non-stop in this pen. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put that on there, and then I'm going to clear this off, and then I'm going to dip it and see if we make a little difference, and maybe it'll give us an indication as to how much ink is actually being taken up into the dipper. So you literally just dip it into your bottle of ink, whatever ink you decide you want to use. And then as I've taken that out, it's now minus 0.26. So we're getting like about a quarter of a mil of ink there. Now, that may not seem like a particularly huge amount of ink, but a quarter of a milliliter is a third of some cartridges. Okay, so you're going to be able to get a good amount of ink in here. That's just filling up the feed there. So what we have here is the Just Turnings Inkcision Works Dipper. Now, as I said, it comes with a number 6 stock Yovo nib, and I have this one in a broad, so it was cut from a broad nib, oblique stub, and that is a right foot. So like I said, basically if you're looking at a nib, a right foot is cut at a slight so it's cut into an italic or stub nib, say it's an italic, and it's cut at an angle that way, so slightly right-footed. So if I turn the nib slightly onto the page, it's just a much smoother writing experience, and it naturally sort of makes better purchase on the page. And because I had it stubified, as opposed to being a crisp sort of like italic nib, it's just sort of slightly rounded edges to that cut, which makes it really smooth and comfortable on the page, a little more forgiving. As I would expect from an Inkcision's nib, it is exceptionally smooth. It's nice and wet. It's super consistent. And also, I know this is a weird thing to say, but when you look at the nib grind, it's beautifully done. Like, it's finished. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not a, you know, oh, this is what we cut it through here, we'll smooth it off. Like, it's precision work, and I absolutely love that. I will say, I'm actually going to be filming a separate short video, one of my bites videos, about this nib in particular. I want to talk about the grind. I want to talk about the feel on the page, all of that kind of stuff. And I will show it in relation to my other favorite right foot oblique nib, which was cut by the team behind Italics brand in the UK, which is no longer around. So for this longer writing sample, to see how much I can get out of this dip, I'm just going to copy from the book I'm currently reading, rereading, which is Unequal Music. By Vikram Seth. It's an astonishing book. I've read this a few times now, and every time I read it, I love it. I should say this is from page 237 of the edition that I have, if you're interested. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it there, because I think that that shows that, you know, you're not having to dip every few words, every few lines like you would with, you know, a regular dip pen or a glass dip pen. This gets a good amount of writing. Using that feed as a reservoir, giving you a nice sort of size in the hand. It's a really useful tool, as I said, for those people who like writing with a range of inks but don't want to have a whole lot of pens inked up, or if you want to take an ink sample or something and, you know, use that and just explore the ink. It's a really, really solid option. So what I have here are other examples of dip pens that I use sort of regularly. So the first one here is the Kakimori pen nib. So that just goes in a regular pen nib holder. And you can get a couple of words with that. Like, it's not got a huge ink reservoir, right? Then you've got something like the brass dip pen from Kakimori. Once again, it's just the nib. I put that in a random plastic holder that I got from an art shop or something. This is great, but it's not a consistent line. Like, depending on how you hold it, you get different amounts of ink on the page. This one is particularly great for like doing ink swatches. Dip it in an ink sample and sort of swatch the ink, you know, with a flatter nib. Really great for that. This here is the Serendipity. Now, this was a collaboration between James Finnis, who ran a stationery shop and made his own pens, and the ink master, Robert Oster, right? And this used the same thing. So it was a Yovo size, or number 6 size feed and nib. I just have a Jinhao nib on here that I've turned into a bit of a Food Aid nib. I use this one for artwork, because I can get like lots of different line variation and stuff, and it can look fun on the page. But this was just like friction fit in there. So you can take it out, but there's no housing, right? And so the idea is there, but using the housing like we have on the DIPPER from Just Turnings and Inkcision Works is great. And then I just have it here alongside. This is the Dominant Industry ink muddler, which is one of the glass dip pens that I use. And I wanted to talk about the different applications, particularly of the DIPPER and a glass dip pen. So obviously we saw in that writing sample, you can get a lot of writing with the dipper. You don't get that with the glass dip pen, but the glass dip pen is much easier to clean. Like if you're swatching, if you've got 30 inks to swatch and you want to write the name of each, dipping a glass dip pen in, writing the name of the ink, swishing it around in some water, drying it off, you're good to go. These are a little more finicky to clean because you can't just, like, there's no way of flushing the nib in the same way as you would you know, like a fountain pen or something. So what I have found, the best way to clean this is initially, as soon as you can, to get it into water, get the, you know, wick as much of the ink out as you can. But occasionally, what I have done is I've taken the nib out and flushed out the nib section just to get a really solid clean, and then just washed out the inside of this. Like, it's rare. I haven't got ink in here every time, but in these kinds of dip pens, if you're putting it into there, you are going to get some ink around the nib as well. So not just in the feed and on the nib. It's not the quick convenience of like a glass dip, but that ability to write for such a long time. And then, you know, take that nib out and swap in if you've got a, you know, like I've got this beautiful, as I said, broad oblique nib on here. Let's say, oh, I need to write with an extra fine nib. I can unscrew that whole entire nib unit and screw in another extra fine nib unit for a Yovo nib, and it's just amazing. Just to put the slightly smaller size of the dipper into context, here it is alongside a Lamy Safari, and here is the uncapped Lamy Safari. So it's not a huge difference, really. What is? It's quite a noticeable difference, but the size of this is still very comfortable and easy to use. You saw me write just over half a page before, quite comfortably. I like using it. Let's talk about some pros and cons. Okay, pros and cons for the dipper from Just Turnings and Inkcision Works. The only cons I have, firstly, is that it's not super convenient to clean. Like, not as convenient as a glass dip pen, much more convenient than filling and cleaning out a pen. It's in that middle ground there, right? It's where you get the best of both worlds. And the only other thing is this initial release is very small, but please express your interest. The more interest they get, the more likely they are to make this like a featured product, I would imagine. I can only imagine it's going to get great interest, so jump in now. So many pros. Firstly, I really like the size and the feel in the hand. It's not big, but it's comfortable. The thickness is really nice, and that little bit of weight from that sort of like solid resin makes it feel nice and comfortable in your hand, and that length is just right. Any shorter and it would be unusable. It could probably be a little bit longer, but it doesn't, honestly, it doesn't need to be. Like, even if you've got bigger hands and it sits sort of, you know, lower in your hand, it's still like, it's going to be comfortable. It's because it's got a nice sort of size to it, if that makes sense. I love the capacity. As I said, it was about, was it like 1/4 ml on a single dip? So like, you are using a good chunk of an ink sample if you dip this. You know, like it's 1/8 of an ink sample, roughly. But you're going to get a good lot of writing out of that. Like a solid lot of writing out of that. I love the options of the materials. When I was chatting with the team at Inkcision Works, they sent me a photo of a range of the versions of this pen, and the materials look amazing. It was such a hard choice. They were like, pick one, and I had to pick 3 and then somehow whittle it down to 1. Like, there's just so many great materials. Stephen just is a master at creating and sourcing materials, and this is a lovely way of showing some of that off. Like, there's a lovely little sort of like couple of slightly transparent spots. I'm not sure if the camera will pick that up, but like just through here, it's a little hit of like transparent blue, and it's just beautiful. And then a pen like this, it comes down to the nibs. So first thing, from a generic perspective, the fact that it uses a Yovo nib and housing threaded is awesome. There aren't many pens like this that do that. So this is a great option. But the even bigger advantage to this is while you will be able to get it with stock nibs, the ability to get a Inkcision Works grind on it, one of Daniel's grinds, is such a huge advantage of this. These are amazing grinds. As I said, you can look at the video where I talk about a few of them, which is linked in the video description here, and I'll be making a separate short video about this specific nib shortly, in like a couple of weeks. So it's such a bonus, and you know, and the prices there are super reasonable, and the service is fantastic, but the product is amazing. So I really heartily commend both Just Turnings and Inkcision for the Dipper. I think it is awesome. I think it's a great product. It's the kind of product I use a lot. As I said, like I try and only have a few pens inked, but sometimes you want to write with a particular ink, or you want to write a letter in a particular ink, or journal in a particular ink, or, you know, review an ink or something like that. This is such a lovely option for that, because it's that middle point between like a glass dip pen and then having to fill and clean an entire pen out, you know, to sort of use that ink once. So yeah, big fan of the Just Turnings and Inkcision Dipper. Jump over to the website, express your interest, and pick one up when you can. So thank you for watching today's video. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notifications button, and please consider becoming a member of this channel. In the meantime, enjoy your pens, your writing, and I'll talk to you soon.